powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
And congratulations to Michael in EHT, Lou in EHT. They have qualified for 99 bottles. 99 bottles, 99 tickets, 99 winners. We are now into qualifying. The next 2 weeks, we will get 99 qualifiers. And then on November 23rd, we'll be live at Maynard's in Margate for this year's 99 Bottles Party, where we'll have unbelievable tickets for this year. We've got club box seats for the Eagles and Saints game. That's New Year's Day, by the way.
Oh, beautiful, baby.
You like a New Year's Day game?
Yeah, you just keep the party going.
I like it. I like a New Year's Day game.
Yeah,
you got
why
a Christmas Eve, a New Year's Day. The Sixers play on Christmas Day this year, by the way. So you got all sorts of festiveness going on. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. We thought we were back on like a normal schedule, but no Eagles Sunday this week either. And we will not have Eagles football on this Sunday either because they play a week from tonight against the Commanders. Geoff Mosher, what's going on, brother?
I'm good, man. I heard your conversation about how exciting the New Year's Day game will be, and let me just say, it's spoken like two men who don't have to do a pregame show and a postgame show on New Year's Day.
That's very true.
Why don't you come hang with my family, see how happy they are that I'm not going to be around.
well, listen, I think those holiday days could be diminished if the division and some things are wrapped up by then. Which, this team's 8-0, and we're starting to see some things kind of materialize. And I want to kind of get your perspective. If you've heard this. They haven't played anybody. The schedule's weak. And I keep saying there's nobody to play. They've beaten the two teams, Minnesota and Dallas. But then you see the Bills lose yesterday. And that kind of goes to show you that if you can get 8 straight games without having a bad week, that kind of tells you that the team's pretty good.
Yeah, I've been saying this on the podcast a lot. I think when people start getting into the, you haven't beat anybody or, your overall strength of schedule is soft. And I said, do you know how hard it is in this league to win on a weekly basis consistently and not have one game where you just don't have your A game and it happens to, the Kansas City every year, lose, as good as they've been, they lose a couple of games. And, as you just mentioned, the Bills do. It's not easy at all to just be 8-0, even if you have a soft schedule. You have to be really, really good to the point where, like that Thursday night game, where even if you do some things wrong or you don't have your A game and you're on the road, you still win. And not only have the Eagles won every game, but if you go to the Vikings game, they won convincingly. I never really felt they were going to lose the Dallas game, even when Dallas was coming back in the third quarter. So there's been even down against Jacksonville, it was so early, I never thought, Jacksonville's definitely winning this game. So I think that's another feather in the cap of the Eagles is that there's really not been a point where in the second half of any game they played, you thought, oh, man, they are headed for an L here. That's pretty impressive.
Well, and, we were talking about this earlier. The one, to me, and you see Buffalo, they lose yesterday, and, they don't run the ball a lick. And if Allen doesn't have a good day, he has an off day, they're in trouble. Saw last night. Yep. They needed to throw the ball almost 70 times to get 20 points in a game against a team that's pretty limited in Tennessee. I don't know that Philadelphia, I think they can beat you in a variety of ways. If they're not throwing the ball well, they can run. If they're not running the ball well, they can throw. They can mix it in, and I think that might be the difference between these three teams.
No, there's no question of the three teams that we all consider to be the best teams in the NFL, whether it's whatever order you want to put it in, Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, Chiefs, whatever. There's no question that the Eagles are the most complete and balanced of the three. That does not guarantee them a victory on Super Bowl Sunday, but it sure helps to have that when other teams are lacking that. And I think it puts them in the driver's seat, especially in the NFC, to at least be able to get there.
Take a look at what they have coming up. The Commanders, Indianapolis, who just fired Frank Reich and hired Jeff Saturday.
What a mess.
A Green Bay team that I just said to Rye, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers just packed it in for the season at some point and said, you know what, I'm better off just watching from the sideline. Like, he looks that despondent and disinterested. Either way, their offense looks that bad. you start to wonder, like when this team will, like, have that Jets moment, have that moment where there's a team that could knock them off, even if they're a double-digit favorite. Because Buffalo, look, the Jets are a solid team, but Buffalo was a double-digit road favorite in that game yesterday. So do you have that moment on this Eagles schedule that you look at?
At one point, it was Indianapolis under the premise that they would get their act together, and in fact, it's been worse. At one point, it was Green Bay. Tennessee, I don't know how they do it. I think Mike Vrabel must be a genius because they're good, and they have no reason to be good. But I just don't think that they're good enough offensively. I mean, you can't be dominant on one side of the ball against the Eagles and get away with it the way the Titans have been at certain times. You have to hold them down, and you have to score on them. And it's been really difficult for teams to do that. Like the Vikings are a good team. I think everybody just has to acknowledge that they may not be a great team and it is a down year, but I just talked about how hard it is to win week after week after week. And even when you're not your best, well, they have been doing that ever since their week 2 loss to the Eagles. They're a good team, and the Eagles beat them by 20 something. So, I mean, there's really not left. I look at the schedule, and really, I guess it's the Giants, just to see if they're for real. And Dallas, second time around, should be a good game if it's meaningful, right? If both teams are playing starters and there's something on the line there, that'll be really interesting. But my God, now we're talking about, a month from now, more.
Yeah. Oh, we're talking about, look, we're not even at Thanksgiving. That game is at Christmas Eve. So the things that could be different. But real quick, you said the Vikings are a good team. I agree with you, and this is why I finally would say, okay, the Vikings in the years past, they've had all these skill players, which we all love in this world. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. They have a good offensive line. Their offensive line is finally worth a damn. And that's why I think that the Vikings are a team that can maybe, I don't want to say, I don't know if they can make it to the Super Bowl, but maybe they can. But their line is way better than they've been. That's why I think the Vikings, I'll take them more seriously than I have in the past.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing our preview on Inside the Birds for that game when the Eagles played the Vikings, and we noted that there's two things that stand out about the offensive line for the Vikings. One is what you said, Mike. It's a lot better than what it used to be. Their left tackle is that second-year player whose name was Christian Darrisaw, I think, off the top of my head. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was injured last year, but he was a big-time player in college, and he's been helpful. And their right guard, O'Neal, or right tackle, I mean, he's a guy who's been a really good success story. They're very young, though. That was the other thing. They have a bunch of either first or second or third-year players on that offensive line. So you can see how they went into Philadelphia. They had to use the silent count. It wasn't their greatest game. Kirk was under pressure, and they struggled. But you could tell that as they went along, that offensive line had talent. It just needs to get experience, and they're getting that experience now. And, I mean, it'll still be a young O-line when they're in the playoffs. But before anything, you need the talent. And you're right, that's where they were really lacking in the past, and they have it now. And the second thing is, and I haven't watched a ton of Vikings game, but just some of the things I'm hearing is that Donatel has tried to be a little bit more creative the last few weeks to get a pass rush. I think Zadarius Smith is playing pretty well now, whereas we saw that game against the Eagles where he basically played the 2021 Jonathan Gannon defense against the Eagles and just allowed himself to get picked apart. They're not doing that the same way anymore.
We're talking with Geoff Mosher. Give him a follow at Geoff Mosher NFL. Gil and I had the MVP conversation earlier, so that's part one to this question. Moshe, is just your thoughts on Jalen and where he stacks up to Mahomes and Allen. And part two, I saw your article this morning on InsideTheBirds.com talking about contract situations, and obviously Jalen Hurts is at the top of that list. So if and when regarding the Brinks truck for Jalen.
Yeah, well, they can't do it until the end of the year anyway because you can't extend a contract until a player finishes third year. But once it's over, it'll be done. I would assume it'll be done unless the Eagles. Well, I think we have to see how it finishes because there's a there's a big difference between having a great year but losing in the first round and then winning the Super Bowl, right? And then whatever happens in between, even second or third round. You're talking about whether you want to give him like that Dak Prescott kind of money, if he doesn't win the Super Bowl, compared to if he does, oh God, you may have to pay him $50 million. And there's a $10 million gap there between like Dak and maybe what a Super Bowl winning quarterback is making right now. Someone like Aaron Rodgers, right, at $50 million. So there's a wide gulf there, and they have to figure it out. The one thing that Eagles will have, Ryan, is some semblance of leverage in that if they make an offer that they think is pretty fair and good, and Jalen Hurts says no, then the Eagles say, okay, well then, next year you play at $1 million. And there's absolutely no way his agent, Nicole Lynn, will allow him to play next year at $1 million. So then what's his alternative? Well, then it's a holdout. I don't know that he wants to do that coming off this kind of year either, because no matter what, the Eagles still have his leverage for next year, the year after on the franchise tag, and if they want another year of the franchise tag, like Washington did with Kirk Cousins, which is not a smart operating model. I'm just saying that leverage for Jalen Hurts is not very good unless, of course, you win the Super Bowl. But I also don't think that matters because the Eagles tend to treat their quarterbacks pretty well.
Part three, I guess, to all of this. Is this idiotic or is this fair to bring up? Jalen hasn't really faced any adversity as far as in-game situations, teams down 10 in the second half. We saw what Mahomes and the Chiefs just did against the Tennessee Titans, and that sort of factors into the MVP talk and debate. But would you like to see some adversity faced? Would you like to see a situation, where the Eagles need to rely on Jalen Hurts, or is that stupid because the reason they haven't is because of how well-rounded they are as a roster?
Yeah, I hear what you're asking. I don't think that there's a cut and dried answer to that. I don't think there's a yes or a no. I mean, I think that Jalen Hurts would sign on the dotted line and everybody on the Eagles right now to win every game by 2 touchdowns. So leading up to the Super Bowl, even if you didn't know the Super Bowl, what would happen in the Super Bowl. But I do think, and I think Jalen Hurts would probably use some kind of Nick Sabanism too about iron sharpens iron or adversity tests the character from within. So I think they would also agree with you that, if they were to be down, it would be interesting. And they were down against Jacksonville. What wasn't it 14-0 at one point? I think maybe really early. But I get what you're saying. I think it would be nice to know. Yeah, that's a good point. So, listen, I think at the end of the day, if you put a gun to their heads, they choose option A, which is win every game by 14 and deal with whatever happens in the playoffs, Yeah.
Well, and Jalen kind of, made the comparison like they were 8-0 at Alabama one year and didn't win the national championship. So in other words, I've seen this before where we can have a great start to a season and not win. So he's well aware of 8-0 not really meaning a damn thing. Look, we talked on Friday's show, Mosher. Is it too early to look at 17-0? I said, you got 9 games left. I mean, you got a whole nother half of a season still left to go before, and quite frankly, I don't know why anybody should care or want them to be undefeated. Unless you're going to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl, that you are historically great.
Right. I mean, you look at the recent history of being 8-0. I mean, the last team to be 8-0 was 2 years ago. The Steelers were 11-0. They lost in the wild card round. Then in 2019, the 49ers and Patriots were both 8-0. The Patriots lost in the wild card round. We know the 49ers lost in the Super Bowl. So at least the 49ers got there, but it's kind of scary knowing the last 3 8-0 teams, 2 of them lost in the wild card round and only one.
Moshe, you just muted yourself somehow. You just muted yourself somehow.
Yeah.
Like in mid-sentence.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah.
He disappeared. Oh, he dropped the mic. Oh, he's back.
I'm back.
All right, well, Geoff Mosher.
I never hit the mute button, so I don't know what happened there.
There you go. I mean, you were talking, your mouth was moving, and I could not hear the words coming out of your mouth.
I muted him. Enough was enough.
Well, what was the last thing you heard me say? I was making a decent point.
Yeah, you were. I can't pinpoint it. It shows.
I was just all right. I'll go back to what I was getting at. The last 3 teams to start 8-0, to your guys' point, 2 of them lost in the wild card round. All right, and then 1 of them lost in the Super Bowl. And if you go back to, let's see, I gave you the last 3 teams, and then the last 4 teams. If you count the 2015 Panthers, they were 14-0, they lost the Super Bowl. And then the 2013 Chiefs were 9-0. They lost in the wild card round. So the last 8 or 9 years of being 8-0, no one's won the Super Bowl, and you've got 3 or 4 wild card round losses. So to your point, which one of you two made it, you're right that being 8-0 doesn't mean anything.
No, it does not.
Other than you're probably going to make the playoffs.
And by the way, the Arizona Cardinals were 8-0 last year and fell apart.
No, they were 7-0. No, 7-0.
7, okay. The Pittsburgh Steelers were what, 10-0, 12-0 one year?
Yes, that was one of the teams that I mentioned. They were 11-0, and then they lost in the wild card round.
So
go Commanders this week?
We have a long way to go before we start to really look at that. And by the way, Minnesota, Dallas, and the Giants are keeping you, you've got to continue. They're right on your heels. They are not letting you slip up. And the Giants realistically almost have a better shot here because they play you twice. If they can because they play Jacksonville, Detroit coming up here. I know Minnesota and Dallas play next weekend. That'll be an interesting one. But the Giants have a shot to keep on winning before they play you on December 4th. That game could really have an interesting dynamic. So this season, while it's got off to a great start, it has been a little odd because of the Phillies in the World Series. You had the bye week, then you played on a Thursday night. Now you're playing on a Monday night. So the Eagles can't let these weird ups and downs of the schedule allow that to alter them a little bit. They got to keep winning, but we just saw the Bills get knocked off by a lesser team. No, I mean, the Jets are pretty good.
Yeah, the Jets are pretty good. I mean, it's still, like you said, though, they were 14-point road favorites. So, I mean, clearly the Vegas didn't think the Jets were that good. But now it'll be interesting because this is like the third time the Jets have been like big underdogs and won a game. So their defense is pretty legit.
Yeah.
In fact, do you know the AFC East is the only other division, I think, where every team is entered this week over 500 or better? The NFC East and the AFC East entered this weekend.
The NFC East average winning percentage is 52-7, and the AFC East is 52-5. So these two divisions, it's like basically what's your favorite flavor. I think that, if you like the Eagles better than the Bills, maybe you think the NFC East is better. If you like the Cowboys better than the Dolphins, they're all comparable. So a lot of fun.
Yeah. What's cool about this season is the story, because it's been a weird season. I just think the Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts story is pretty cool. Yeah. Because I think the Dolphins are pretty good. Yeah, obviously they had to navigate being on their third-string quarterback, and they lost a couple of games. But Tua's having an unbelievable year. Jalen Hurts is probably the leader to be MVP right now. And, you track these guys going back to college and everything that transpired between them. I think it's a pretty cool story.
It is, yep. And
would be a cool
they had
Super
the
Bowl,
two highest quarterback ratings in Week 9 was Tua and Hurts. So there you go. All right, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, the Eagles take on the Commanders. Geoff will be back on Wednesday, and we'll start to focus on that matchup right here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mosher, take care, buddy.
Take care, fellas.